Greetings, dear listeners. Welcome to Bare Layers. Today, we'll dive into the story of a legendary Soviet intelligence couple, Gevork and Goar Vartanian. These exceptional spies, a devoted husband and wife, faced the most perilous missions together, leaving an indelible mark on world history. In this first part, we'll travel back in time to their childhoods, their initial steps into the world of espionage, and their remarkable triumph in Tehran in 1943. Origins and childhood. To understand how these two became legendary spies, we must start with their families and early years. Gevork Vartanian was born in Rostov-on-Don, a city in southern Russia. His family was Armenian, a minority community with a rich cultural heritage and resilient spirit. Gevork's father, Andrei Vartanian, appeared to be a mere businessman, running an oil press and later expanding into confectionery production. But in truth, Andrei secretly served Soviet intelligence, operating under the cover of a merchant. In a world on the brink of war, his activities couldn't escape notice. Andrei was often tailed by foreign agents and even arrested once, though released due to lack of evidence. In this secretive household, young Gevork grew up in an atmosphere shrouded in mystery. Though his father never disclosed details of his work, Gevork sensed that Andrei was more than a businessman. Gradually, Andrei involved him in small tasks, like delivering a letter to a stranger. These were Gevork's first lessons in a half-century-long espionage career. Meanwhile, Goar Vartanian, born Goar Pahlavanyan on January 25, 1926, in Leninakan, now Gyumri, Armenia, moved to Iran at age 6, settling in Tehran. Her father ran a business there, and Tehran, a cosmopolitan hub where Iranians, Russians, British, Germans, and Americans intersected, shaped her early life. Years later, Goar recalled how Tehran exposed her to cultural diversity and the tangled web of international espionage. The city was no ordinary capital. It was a hotspot where every major power, Soviet Union, Britain, Nazi Germany, and the US, had agents in play. In this environment, fate brought Goar and Gevork together when he visited the home of her brother, Oganis. From friendship, their bond grew into a lifelong partnership. More crucially, this connection drew Goar into the world of espionage, where she would share Gevork's most dangerous missions.
Stepping into espionage. In 1940, Europe was engulfed in war. Nazi Germany had overrun much of the continent. In the Middle East, Tehran became a covert battlefield where international intelligence agencies clashed. It was in this context that Gevork, at just 16, met Ivan Agayants, a Soviet spy overseeing Middle Eastern operations. Recognizing the young man's intelligence and potential, Agayants tasked Gevork with forming a youth intelligence unit. Dubbed the Light Cavalry half-jokingly, this group consisted mainly of Armenian teens in Tehran, none over 20. Their weapons weren't guns, but courage, sharp memories, and sometimes just bicycles. They roamed the streets, observing, gathering intelligence, and tailing suspicious German expatriates. Later, the group acquired a Zundap motorcycle, a symbol of the era, but their bicycles allowed them to move swiftly and discreetly. It was in this unit that Goar began her espionage journey. When Gevork invited her to join, she agreed without hesitation. Within months, she proved her natural talent. Once, she uncovered 2 defecting German pilots planning to flee to Baku and join the Nazis.
Her tip foiled their scheme. In those days, the light cavalry became a vital arm of Soviet intelligence. Records show that between 1940 and 1941, they helped identify and neutralize nearly 400 German spies in Tehran. One notable achievement was infiltrating Hans Walther, a German running an old bookstore that served as a front for Nazi spies exchanging coded messages. With their youthful charm and knowledge of books, Gevork's team frequented the shop, earning Walter's trust and eventually persuading him to work for the Soviets. During this time, Gevork received a special assignment. Soviet intelligence discovered that the British, their allies, were running a secret school in Tehran to train spies and saboteurs for deployment into Soviet territory. Posing as a student, Gevork infiltrated the school. For months, he memorized faces and details. As a result, every spy later crossing into the Soviet Union was swiftly apprehended. The British were forced to shut down the school. Years later, Gevork recalled with a smile, "I owe a lot to British intelligence. In just 6 months, they taught me skills I used throughout my career."
Tehran, 1943. Operation Long Jump. The first pinnacle of Gevork and Goar's careers came in 1943. World War II had reached a critical stage. The Soviet Union was holding off Germany's onslaught at a staggering human cost. To shift the war's tide, Stalin pressed his Western allies to open a second front in Europe. After much debate, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill agreed to meet Stalin in Tehran in November 1943, the first time the Big Three Allied leaders would convene in person. But this plan reached Hitler's ears. To him, it was a golden opportunity. Assassinating all three leaders could plunge the Allies into chaos, potentially reversing the war's course. A plan codenamed Operation Long Jump was devised, led by Otto Skorzeny, the notorious SS officer who had recently stunned the world by rescuing Mussolini. The scheme involved parachuting commandos into Iran, linking with German agents in Tehran, and attacking the leaders during their meeting at the British embassy. However, Soviet intelligence caught wind of the plot. A key figure was Nikolai Kuznetsov, a Soviet agent in Ukraine who, posing as a German officer, extracted details from a drunken Hans-Ulrich von Ortel. The intelligence reached Moscow, and the NKVD tasked Gevork and Goar's team with surveillance. In late November, the light cavalry worked tirelessly. They identified a suspicious Iranian aiding the German commandos. Under interrogation, he revealed the location of 6 German paratroopers who had landed in Qum, 120 kilometers from Tehran. Disguised meticulously, dyed hair, fake beards, and local attire, the Germans rode camels toward Tehran, hiding in a villa once used by the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence. Through radio intercepts and surveillance, the Vartanians' team learned another commando wave led by Skorzeny was imminent, planning to infiltrate the British embassy via underground tunnels to assassinate the leaders. But the plot never materialized. The first commando group was captured before acting. One was allowed to send a false signal to Berlin, claiming all is well. Believing the report, Hitler grew suspicious when communications later faltered and Skorzeny canceled the mission. As a result, the Tehran Conference of 1943 proceeded safely. Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill finalized plans for the Second Front, the Normandy invasion of June 1944. Historians argue that without this operation's success, had Hitler's plan worked, World War II could have dragged on for years, with a potentially different outcome. For Gevork and Goar, this was the achievement that cemented their legacy. Though young spies, their quick thinking and loyalty safeguarded the world's most pivotal leaders.
Love and devotion amid war. Amid the war's ferocity, a love story quietly blossomed. Gevork, the brave young man, and Goar, the shark-witted woman, roamed Tehran together, facing danger daily. Their love wasn't built on grand gestures, but on absolute trust in each mission. They knew a single misstep
could cost their lives. Yet this only deepened their bond. After the war, they married and continued their espionage work worldwide for decades. A story for the next part. Dear listeners, we've just traced the early journey of the Vartanian spies, from childhood to their entry into espionage and their monumental triumph in Tehran in 1943. This was not only a turning point for them, but for global history. Had the assassination plot succeeded, the world as we know it might not exist. In Part 2, we'll follow Gevork and Goar's post-war lives, their covert missions, narrow escapes, and the legacy they left behind. See you in the next episode.
Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to Bare Layers. In the previous episode, we followed the youth of Gevork and Goar Vartanian, two legendary Soviet intelligence agents, from their early days in Tehran to their glorious triumph when they successfully thwarted the assassination attempt on the Big Three at the Tehran Conference of 1943, in the operation known as Long Jump. Today, in Part 2, we will continue the story, their journey after World War II. After the war, officially becoming intelligence officers. In 1945, World War II ended, Nazi Germany collapsed, Japan surrendered, and the world entered a new era. But as soon as the guns fell silent, a new confrontation emerged, the Cold War. The Soviet Union and the United States, wartime allies, quickly became opposing poles, with irreconcilable ideologies, interests, and global ambitions. For Gevork and Goar, the end of the war did not mean rest. On the contrary, it was only the beginning. In 1946, Gevork officially joined the Soviet Foreign Intelligence Service, then called the NKGB, later the KGB. Goar, his lifelong partner and loyal comrade, soon became his collaborator in every mission. Their wedding was simple, without glamour. Instead of a normal family life, they chose to remain faithful to two eternal companions, secrecy and danger.
The first campaigns of the Cold War. Once they officially became intelligence officers, Gevork and Goar's missions expanded beyond Tehran. They were sent to many places, from the Middle East and Europe to Latin America. At that time, one of the Soviet Union's greatest concerns was nuclear technology. The United States had successfully built the atomic bomb in 1945, while the Soviets were racing to catch up. This race took place not only in laboratories, but also on the intelligence front. Although full details were never made public, many declassified documents later revealed that the Vartanians group was involved in collecting scientific and technical intelligence from the West, helping the Soviet Union shorten the gap in nuclear development. Another campaign unfolded in the Middle East, where Vartanian was tasked with monitoring and neutralizing Western spy networks attempting to penetrate the USSR through Iran, Turkey, and Afghanistan. According to historian Evgeny Vartanian in the Vartanian File, the couple saved the lives of fellow Soviet agents several times by providing early warnings of capture or assassination plots. In every place they were stationed, Gevork and Goar lived under different covers, sometimes a married merchant couple, other times as journalists or technical experts. Whatever role they played, they had to act naturally, leaving no room for mistakes.
Decades in the shadows. From the late 1940s to the mid-1980s, Vartanian and his wife took part in countless operations across multiple continents. But the nature of espionage was silence.
No public reports, no official praise. One of their recorded missions was protecting Soviet delegations at the United Nations in New York and Geneva. They had to ensure that Moscow's high-ranking officials did not fall into the traps of the CIA or MI6. Many times, they discovered recruitment attempts or even assassination plots and thwarted them in time. During the Cold War, intelligence was not just about gathering information. It was also a war of patience, psychology, and nerves of steel. Every meeting could be a trap. Every new acquaintance might be an embedded operative. Goar was especially skilled in the art of social intelligence, infiltrating diplomatic, commercial, or academic circles where she could observe and connect. Gevork, meanwhile, excelled in analysis, organization, and counterintelligence. Together, they formed a rare dual blade. According to the story of the double agent by Thomas Vartanian, in the 1960s, Gevork's team once foiled a plot to sabotage an oil pipeline in Central Asia, a strategic Soviet project. Had it succeeded, the Soviet economy could have suffered a severe blow. Though details remain classified, these feats showed that the Vartanians were not just one-time heroes in Tehran 1943, but silent soldiers across 4 decades.
Retirement, but not rest. In 1986, after more than 40 years of service, Gevork Vartanian officially retired with the rank of KGB Major General. This was a rare recognition, as few intelligence officers were ever awarded the rank of general. Goar also left official duties, but the two continued training cadets at the Moscow Foreign Intelligence Academy. With decades of experience, they became hidden mentors for the younger generation of officers. Their students later recalled, Gevork had a slow storytelling style, but every story contained a life-or-death lesson. Goar was stricter, always emphasizing small details, from eye contact to the art of blending into high society. During the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the Vartanians remained in Moscow, witnessing the tragic end of the country they had served all their lives. But unlike many other former officers, they neither panicked nor abandoned their homeland. They chose silence, a modest life, and continued to pass on their experience to successors.
Belated recognition. For decades, the Vartanians' names were completely hidden. Even many close friends had no idea what they had done during their long years abroad. Only in 2000, when many files were declassified, did the public learn of their role in the Tehran 1943 operation. The international press, from the New York Times to The Guardian, published articles praising them. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin, himself a former KGB officer, honored them multiple times. Gevork was awarded the title Hero of the Russian Federation, one of the nation's highest distinctions. Goar, though without a military rank, was recognized as a true comrade in arms. In a rare interview, Goar humbly said, "We simply fulfilled our duty, and that duty was to protect the motherland." In 2012, Gevork Vartanian passed away in Moscow at the age of 87. His funeral was solemnly held, attended by government leaders and former intelligence colleagues. His tombstone bore a simple inscription, Hero of the Russian Federation, Legendary Spy. Goar lived 7 more years until her death in 2019 at the age of 97. Throughout that time, she remained calm and unassuming. When asked about her husband, she only smiled gently. He was a good husband and a loyal comrade. They had no children, but left behind a large family, generations of intelligence officers they had trained, along with the chapters of history they had written with their lives.
The legacy of the Vartanians can be summed up in 3 words: loyalty, silence, immortality. Loyalty. They devoted their lives to the Soviet Union and later Russia, never betraying for personal gain. Silence. They worked for 40 years, yet almost no one knew their names. Their glory lay in silence. Immortality. Their achievement at Tehran 1943 became an inseparable part of world history, proof that sometimes the fate of millions can depend on the actions of just a few individuals in the shadows. Today, when speaking of Gevork and Goar Vartanian, people remember not only a married couple of spies, they are a symbol of absolute devotion, in love, in ideals, and in mission. Dear listeners, with this we have completed the journey of the legendary Vartanian couple, from youth in the fire of World War II, through the decades of the Cold War, and finally to the legacy they left for humanity. Thank you for listening.